make you feel good kind of messages, and that's one thing I liked about the funerals here. Like I remember attending my first funeral up in Wat and then they had just a box with a corpse in it, and we could all go and meditate on it. And the corpse had no cosmetics or anything, just the corpse as it, with no attempt to make it look other than the way it was. And then we had, we contemplated death, and Lumpur Cha, his desanas were all about death, and you're actually, addressing the event in a very direct way. And I found that very wonderful, because you really need to, death of another human has an effect on you, and death is what we all, know is going to happen to us, and just the directness and the the usefulness of just contemplating what had actually happened. And I didn't find it depressing or, traumatizing. Anyway, it was very helpful and led towards dispassion, like the Asubha practices, meditations in our tradition. If they're done rightly, they're not to make you feel averse and disgusted with everything, but to lead towards dispassion, a sense of coolness, and rather than fear or any kind of strong emotion. And at one time we used to go to Sri Raja Hospital, in the old days, to see the autopsies. And one day I went, go on Monday, because over the weekend there's a lot of murders and gruesome things happen. So there's a lot of interesting autopsies. and one Monday I went into Sri Raja, and the man in charge said, "I've got something special for you." So he took me to this place. The door was closed, but the stench was already seeping out through the cracks, and they opened the door, and this terrible, putrid smell attacked me, and I had to actually kind of force myself to go in, because the smell was so bad. I just wanted to retreat from it. And then I went in, and there was a rotting, bloated corpse, and they'd found it in one of the clogs, and so it'd been, rotting for quite a few days, and probably a young man, and it was all bloated, and in this room, they put these bloated corpses in a special room for this. And you could see on the ceiling where things, with the bodies exploded and the guts were hanging from the ceiling. It's pretty gruesome looking place. But and then this corpse looked about ready to explode. So I was a bit, I could think about it and feel a bit anxious, but I went up to it, and I just noticed, first there was this repulsion, and kind of seeing it in terms of its kind of hideous, gruesome sight and the smell and everything. But as I kind of let go of that, reacting to that feeling, then I became very calm. And I started noticing the kind of beauty of decay. How these you could see these worms crawling out of the mouth and the eyes, and which are generally considered like horror images, but actually you're witnessing a natural decomposition, which it has a certain beauty to it when you get past the initial kind of aversion or fear. So then I even went up and touched the rotting corpse, just to go past this tendency to be repelled and just dwell on, get caught in this feeling of how horrible and disgusting it is. And then when I came out of Sri Raja Hospital that day, I had this wonderful sense of dispassion, of just being totally cool inside. And I realized the result of like Asubha Gamatan, it was a very calm, collected, composed feeling. It could pass, the most glamorous and beautiful women, and there was total dispassion, and you kind of see this potential corpse in even the most attractive people, and then we had to cross over the river from Sri Raja right into the area like Wat Mahatat, and that where you go through these marketplaces, and there was meat hanging on hooks, and people selling kway teow and all this, and you felt that just like the corpse, and it's kind of not, it all looked like decaying meat, and not, in any way aroused hunger or interest in it. And then the way one looked at other human beings was through dispassion, rather than through, say, being attracted or repelled by them. So sometimes, I remember my first instructions on the Supagamaton were, from the bhikkhu at Wat Bhawan, and he kind of indulged in kind of a sick indulgence in so disgusting the ear dirt and the eye dirt, and you'd almost feel he was getting high on being disgusted and repelled. And it felt like a perversion almost, like it was a bit sick. And, like you were supposed to kind of tell yourself how horrible, disgusting it all is, and create a kind of, a negative image of aversion, where, a supa is not, doesn't mean, it means the non-beautiful, like supa means the attractive, the beautiful, and a supa is the negation of that. And then the English word disgust is really, it means, it has a strong meaning of aversion, but actually it means like, it's from the French or Latin, and like you lose your taste for this. You no longer see it in terms of an illusion of attractiveness. These kind of ways of experimenting with, to be able to develop a Supagamaton in a way that it leads towards dispassion rather than just, a sense of thinking that the world is disgusting and horrible, or that human bodies are trying to convince yourself that they're not attractive or that you should be averse or disgusted by them, but you're actually not trying to just convince yourself or play games with your mind, but actually through this mindfulness and reflectiveness, you begin to experience this inner calm and coolness, which I would call dispassion. And that's the good result of Asubha meditation. And it's like this skeleton and this plasticine thing. These are. I didn't find them. I found them interesting, but some people have some had very strong reactions, seen it as perverse and sick. But I didn't have that impression at all. And you can see like that, they have one where you just see the whole nervous system of a human individual, where they've got rid of everything but the nerves, and they have all kinds of interesting exhibits of circulation and digestion and all the rest. I went to a funeral in Bangkok. This was years ago, of very wealthy people, and at one of the big temples there, and there were hundreds of people at this funeral, and then they had during this funeral they opened the coffin, and then this terrible stench came out of it, and then we were invited. The monks were all invited to go up and look at the corpse, and everyone could do this, and it was quite, I'd never seen anything like this at a layperson's funeral, and they had a photograph of the woman that had died, and when she was, she died quite young. I think she was about 50 or so when she died, so it wasn't an old woman, but you had this photograph of her, and then you saw this rotting, putrid corpse inside. It was, greenish and foul, and really in the state of advanced decay, and everybody, was encouraged to go and look at it. And of course, being a monk, but a lot of people wouldn't. They just couldn't take it. But I was impressed that they would do that. That it was a kind of well-to-do family. They had this huge funeral. And they don't need me. That's the only time I've ever seen that done. One time at Sri Rat, they had a man who'd been murdered. He'd been a samlor driver, and he was about in his 50s. And so the man that was performing the autopsy, exposed the lungs, and they were black, coal black, with pollution and probably cigarette smoke, and of course all the samlor written in them where they, all the exhaust fume come right into the samlor. So that was interesting. Then following that, they had a young woman who committed suicide, and of course she was, maybe 20-year-old woman, and her lungs were in a kind of a delicate pink color. She hadn't. That's quite. When you're in Bangkok, you're very much aware of this pollution that you're breathing in all the time. Of course, if you're a samlo driver, it must take a great toll on your health. And in England, for example, if they have, like somebody, say an English person who is a Buddhist dies, and then maybe they've asked to have a funeral at Amaravati, and so their relatives come who know nothing about Buddhism, and usually we built the temple there. We had behind the main shrine in the temple is called a chapel of rest. It's a room behind the main shrine where you can put a body, and it have this beautiful we call it engraved glass reclining Buddha in there. It's huge, plate glass. And then we put the coffin into this room, and then it's open, and you can go and meditate. We go and chant and meditate on the body. And so when the English person dies, then we do this, and we encourage the relatives to go and look at the body. Some won't do it because it's so something they can't make themselves do. But then we have a certain ceremony of chanting, matika, and things like that. And then they ask me to give a reflection. So I just give reflection, anicca vada sankhara, and just a kind of basic Buddhist reflection on death and impermanence. Nothing fantastic. And afterwards, some of these people come up and tell me how wonderful that was, how helpful it was. These are like British people who don't know anything about Buddhism, but when they hear Dhamma like that, they find it helpful, and rather than off-putting or strange, because usually, like in funerals in Britain, are usually, like at a crematorium, you got 15-20 minutes, and then it's just get it in there and say the prayers and do all that, and then get rid of the body as quickly as possible. So my intention at Amaravati was to try to kind of make a funeral, death of a person, more significant. So you're not just trying to get rid of the body and ignore the event. And so many people find this very helpful in just dealing with this natural condition, that we're all going to die anyway, and then the loss of loved ones is a part of every human experience. So you reflect on this, that the death, seeing your parents get old and die, and your friends die, and death is a part of one. What we love and cherish is going to die, and we have to experience that usually before oneself dies. And even though that's so obviously a fact of life, not many people have consciously accepted that or appreciate that. So many people say, "Why did they have to die?" Or "This, why is this happening to me?" Or they think that they shouldn't have. And one woman, her mother died at, I think, at 100 years, and this woman was, why did she have to die? 100 years. I mean, that's pretty good. Why did she have to die? And this is, one can understand that emotional reactions, but this reflective style is so useful, to bring into consciousness your fears or dreads, and to be able to make them conscious, and not as but in this way of reflecting in terms of Dhamma rather than in terms of just creating more kind of dreadful emotions around it. Like I found, like all kinds of, fear is one of our primal emotions. This is a fear realm that we are living in. So there's a lot to be frightened of. Because you realize your very vulnerable form. The human form isn't, doesn't have has a very soft skin. It's easily damaged. So just on that level, there's a lot to naturally fear. And then, of course, now we've got all the animals in cages, so we don't have to deal with bears and wild elephants and tigers. But you've got some pretty crazy people in London, wild, mad people around. The humans are much more dangerous than bears or tigers. And so the fear is and you see it in the animal realm. It's all survival, isn't it? Because everything is subject to being killed or consumed. Now then, the humans, we can create laws and agree on moral precepts. So, the first precept is bana nibanta, not to intentionally kill another human. But in spite of that, we still, we try to make, support each other's existence through the moral precepts, and then we have laws and punishments for murder and killing and whatnot. But still, so we have a kind of maybe a sense of security that we wouldn't have if we were living, say, in a jungle or a place where there was just, the laws of morality and of society didn't apply. So it does give you, but still the fear haunts us because there's a lot of anxiety and worry, various kind of neurotic fears that modern people are obsessed with, in their daily lives. Just anxiety and worry for one thing. And that's where this reflective style bringing, beginning to really look at the tendency to worry. Is, what's going to happen, what will be the future of Nanachat, and then we can start worrying about it. Or, will I, my health, will I have good health, or is there something, some kind of terminal ailment I'm going to experience? I could worry about all kinds of possibilities of loss and pain and misery in the future. and then bringing that tendency to worry into consciousness is observing. Worry is like this. It's all about the future. Things might not go the way I want them to, or I might be, lose my mind. I might be going senile. As you get older, your memory isn't so good. So every time I can't think of something, I think, oh, Alzheimer's. The beginning of Alzheimer's. This is because these are, the future for someone my age is what's in store for me in the future. Really, is death, increasing aging and death, and so this is, but this also, in terms of reflective meditation, is very important to get the perspective on this, on the aging process that's taking place in the body, and then how the mind also is affected by age, and so you're learning from aging and sickness and loss, rather than just dreading it and resenting it and resisting it or denying it. So, like, this practice will take you through the whole span of your life, from the present to the death of your physical body, and so it gives you a way of learning from this form, this lifetime, in a way that you're not, when the death moment comes, you don't have this fear and anxiety. You're prepared. You're ready for that final event. The death moment. So it's the modern society is about trying to create images of perfection and beauty, and this ideal of progress that was brought up with this is that everything's should be progressing and advancing. So, and then this the ups and downs of the economies, the boom and bust economic problems, and the idea of evolution and progress is very much instilled in you when you're in a cultural way. But in terms of Dhamma, you're beginning to see things how progress is just one half of it, and then it reaches a peak and then it goes the other way. And that's just the natural pattern of conditioned phenomena. And so this is where you're not thinking in terms of making that life should be getting better and better and more advanced and happier, but you're learning the way it is in terms of Dhamma through just observing your breath and your own body and your own emotional tendencies and the things that you experience in your life, praise and blame, happiness and suffering.